Hi everybody, welcome to the final project. It's the end of the course. Everybody does absolutely amazing work. As many of you saw from last semester, we did a project called Titanic.
I'm flying!
Which was about machine learning using your own data as a training data set inside of a larger project. The problem that people had was that because they were doing the project in Python Anywhere, the system ran out of memory. We had to upgrade everybody's account so they could finish the project. And it didn't necessarily reflect what we were learning in the course. So for this semester, I changed things up and it's a brand new video, a brand new project. And for fall 2019, we have the Broccoli Pizza Project. The Broccoli Pizza Project, which of course is a theme throughout the entire course, is all about broccoli pizza or the food that you choose to be in your project. Now, there's a few different pieces, and what we're going to do is combine dictionaries, JSON data, and pieces from the internet together with your program to make something awesome.
Took the restrictor plate off, give the Red Dragon a little more juice. But let's keep that on the down low. It's not exactly street legal.
Now, we've been doing elements of this in class. We've been putting those pieces together. And what you're going to do is stitch together a bunch of different pieces. Now, essentially the project has 5 separate components. First of all, make a program. So the program's going to have a nice program interface. You turn it on and it's going to give you a list of options. That's going to run as a loop, so unless the user picks something, that will always be on. Really important, the program should not end. Right, so you're always going to be at the main menu or go into an option. When you're done with the option, return to the main menu. The easiest way and probably the most simple way to do this is with functions. You already know how to do this from your games. Try to do this for the program. Now, in the program, one option is going to ask users to add 1 to 3 foods. In total, you need to have 3 foods. Now, what happens is you connect your program to an API that has food information. Let's say you type in hard-boiled eggs. It then uses a natural language processor on the site of the site to figure out what you're talking about, how many and how much and how many calories, and send you back a JSON dictionary with all the information. Now you're going to ask the user to put in 3 foods. So for example, you could put in egg, toast, and coffee, or 2 eggs, or even you could do fancy recipes like chicken a la king or something else, right? So it understands using natural language processing what recipe you're trying to find. So for example, if you put in coffee, baked apple, and 3 eggs, it would know what you're talking about. So you don't necessarily have to treat the numbers as separate variables. You don't have to worry about strings and integers. Everything the user puts in gets sent as a string to the API. Now, it might not understand what the user is talking about. Like for example, when I typed in 40 cups of coffee, it didn't know what that was. So you have to make sure that if it comes back as an error, that prints out to the user and it explains to them what's going on to try again with something it knows. Now, every time they look something up, the information should be formatted nicely and displayed to the user and saved in a text or CSV file. The most important characteristic that we're looking at is the calories, right? So you're going to have the name of the food and the calories, and you're welcome to store whatever else you'd like too. For example, it would be relatively simple to store the entire dictionary, right? Remember that we want to decompile the JSON formatted document, so you're probably going to have to use something to do that like we've discussed in class. Next, you're going to create within the main menu a BMI program, asking the user their weight, asking the user their gender, and so on, and it will generate their ideal BMI. You're also going to have to find out how many calories somebody should eat given particular parameters, and you're going to check the calories stored in the file. So for those 3 items or more, the items that are stored, what are all the calories added up together, and what percentage of the recommended daily intake from whatever source you decide to use are the calories that they picked. So for example, if I type in 3 pounds of bacon, 4 pounds of butter, and 8 pounds of flour, I would imagine I'd use up more than my allotted daily calorie intake, I would assume. Okay, but the important thing is that the calories in the lookup at the beginning are being stored into the text file or CSV, and your program, when you're calculating BMI, reads the file, decompiles it and finds the calories, adds the calories together, brings back the answer, and compares it to your choices. Finally, you have to create a chart of any type, ideally in Plotly like we did in class, And this could be graphing any particular data. So for example, you could look at what the calories are per options, but since there's so much data that comes through the food API, you should be able to graph vitamins, you should be able to graph different food choices, calories, and so on, because there's endless amounts of data that comes through there. The difficult challenge in this particular assignment is really to figure out how could I get down to the small data that I actually need instead of the enormous data that comes in. The examples that we did in class were the space API, which is very, very limited, the movie API, which is a little larger, and this food API is even bigger. Now to get started, there's a few pieces that you'll need. So in order to start the project, you have to go into the Moodle documents and read how to set up the API. In the API, you'll have to use your email address and register to get a key. This key is important because that's what lets you authenticate against the food API server. Now there's 3 keys that do 3 different things. One of them looks up nutrition information, one looks up calories, one does recipes. Now for example, you could say, I only have an apple in the fridge, what can I make with it? Query the server, it will send it back to you. The API keys that you're using, you should pick the free tier, will let you do like 100 API calls every minute, which should be more than enough that you need for this project. Once you do that, in order to keep things simple, you'll install a package onto your system on Python Anywhere using bash, and that's going to allow you to run simple commands, for example like e.foodlookup, without having to actually connect using the full API. It's going to make things a lot easier, and I gave you example code how to do that. Finally, once you authenticate against it and you're able to run queries, you need to set up the program so it's taking a user query and passing it on to the API, taking the API results and saving it, and then analyzing it against the other information, printing a graph, and then of course writing ding at the end or a word of your choice to when we know it's done. And that's the whole idea, right? So you're going to build this program, it has a useful purpose, it will calculate BMIs, look up food information, analyze the food information, and hopefully provide high quality answers, right? I'm going to provide a document that has all the logins, the API keys, and everything else you have to do. And I hope you really enjoy this because this is a great example of most web or app programs, how they work. It grabs data from somewhere, transforms them, and then does something else with it, right? Stock programs, everything else you could think of pretty much work the same way. So 2 important notes. First of all, I hope you all had fun and you enjoy the project, but most importantly, really importantly, make sure that you don't abuse the API because you'll get kicked out of it and you'll be stuck. You won't be able to do it if you do millions of calls against the API. They're going to stop your account. The other thing that you have to know is that the API keys are secret, so it's important don't post them on the internet, only submit them in your homework because the number of calls that you make through each API endpoint is monitored, and that's basically what their business is. So you have to be very careful that you're not giving it out to the world because that could mean your project won't work, right? You should end up with 6 different pieces of information. For each API endpoint, there's going to be a username and a password. In our case, it's going to be an ID and an authentication key, which is basically the same thing. And you just copy those strings of numbers into the places that are indicated, and the file has screenshots and shows you what to do. If you have any questions, let me know. I hope you have a lot of fun, and hopefully this will be the start of building some amazing applications. Thank you.